YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, back on Total War Warhammer. Gonna bring you some more battles. Let's see how I'm doing on the leaderboard. I bet I'm number one. I'm always number 192. No, I really don't care about the leaderboard. Anyway, I just thought that'd be fun. So let's go to the replays. This one's gonna be some dwarf versus vampire counts, and it's gonna be fought outside Castle Drakenhof, so an appropriate location. I'm using Ungrim Iron Fist. I have a Ruin Smith, a couple of miners with blasting charges. I think 4 dwarf warriors with great weapons, 4 dwarf warriors. I have 4 quarrelers. I guess 4 is the magic number. And trying to think what else. Oh, 1 Slayer unit that's right here. These guys are awesome with the 2-handed axes, barefoot, mohawks, you name it, they got it. I've got 2 Longbeards for morale support. These are the dwarf warrior, or no, these are the miners with blasting charges right there. Let's take a look at some of the different units here. There's my quarrelers. They're shooting at some bats that the vampires are bringing in. So let's take a look at that. There's some fell bats flying around, 2 units of those. Most of the vampire army is still outside of my vision, but we can see some of them here. He's got a line of skeleton warriors leading a line of grave guard with great weapons. So these grave guard are going to be armor piercing. That's a good choice versus the dwarves because everything the dwarves has is high armor, very high armor. So I feel like that he's got a decent infantry force to oppose me with. These grave guard with great weapons are definitely going to be tough. Now the vampires have some cheap units like these skeleton warriors. Some of the units he's fielding are expensive. He also has this White King here, and the White King is a melee specialist unit that's going to support his armies, and definitely, you know, a little bit concerned about him. And then he's also got von Karstein on a Hellsteed over here, like a flying Hellsteed. So not his zombie dragon, but it's von Karstein nonetheless. Now von Karstein is a mixed spellcaster melee specialist, which means he's not the world's best melee specialist, but he can use his magic to really make him better in melee, or to take away your soul before the battle even begins. So that would be the vampiric way to do that. Let's take a look at this map. Now this is actually a pretty cool map. Got this structure out here in the center that kind of breaks up the center of the map. A little bit of woods here and there, and it's got like the sweet vampiric corruption looking effects going on. Pretty cool map, honestly. Now, as this player, you do deploy a little bit on an uphill, but I think both players actually deploy on a bit of an uphill. It's an interesting map. This breaking up the center can lead to some interesting fights. So like right here, it's going to create a insurpassable flank for me. I've got my just standard dwarf warriors up front because I know he's going to be leading with skeletons, but I also know that these dwarf warriors will lose badly to his grave guard. Now my quarrelers are going to open fire, and they're going to have no problem ripping apart a ton of skeletons, so this is just going to force my opponent to rush, which the vampires have to do eventually anyway. It gives me a chance to eat up his meat shield a little bit. So yeah, I'm going to do some pretty good damage with the quarrelers. He's going to immediately fly in the fell bats. This is their purpose, is to come disrupt your lines while they charge. So the fell bats are going to come in here, and they're going to fell down on my men. Anyway, no, they're not going to be able to beat my quarrelers. The bats are weak. They're just a distractionary force. Here comes the dwarf warriors engaging the skeleton warriors. I mean, I should do decent versus skeleton warriors. It's the follow-up from the grave guard that concerns me, and I want my guys with great weapons to go against the grave guard because they have more armor, and they're also going to be armor piercing. So I want my armor piercing to face them. He's using a spell here that looks like it's hexing my leadership and armor and weapon strength there, so that's going to be bad for me. Now, the Rune Smith is kind of like a wizard, or as close to a wizard as the dwarfs can get. He's got 3 different abilities. One of these abilities improves his damage resistance and that of all the allies surrounding. And then some of his other abilities, one of them is a direct damage, which I don't know if I just used it on von Karstein. I don't think I've used it on von Karstein yet. He has a direct damage spell. Von Karstein was casting this vortex over here that's soaked up a pretty good number of my men there. Looks pretty sweet. The magic on this game really is cool. And check it out. He had these hex wraiths very cleverly hidden in the forest. These guys do armor-piercing damage, and he brings them in from behind. And now he's got this flank of mine all pinned up. So very nice sneak attack from some hex wraiths on his part, which is a mounted unit. And here he gets into my quarrelers. But I do have Ungrim Iron Fist out here to help fend off the hex wraiths. So that's going to be fortunate for me. And quarrelers aren't a complete pushover in melee. They're not great, but they're not bad. So they're going to do pretty decent. I have a couple of these miners with blasting charges. I haven't gotten to use them yet. And you can see here my Dwarf Warriors with great weapons trying to fend off the Grave Guard. They're not quite up to par with Grave Guard, but they're going to be, you know, worth their money here in terms of holding these guys back. And it was over here that those Hex Wraiths got me so bad, but now I'm pouring in crossbow fire, which I don't know what crossbows would do to a Wraith, but they're starting to fall apart. So these guys start disintegrating, but some of my men are routing here as well because the Hex Wraiths do cause terror. Fortunately, I had some Longbeards here to help bolster morale, and my guys are going to stay in the fight a little bit longer. But in the center, it's a tough fight. I have to bring my Slayers in to try and stop the Grave Guard in the center, and I don't know why they're running around. I must have given them a bad order. You can see the Von Karstein right here in the middle of them, and back here the White King is being fought by Ungrim Iron Fist, sorry. Look at this White King pushing my guys around. Anyway, so yeah, it's a fairly tight battle right now. The vampires are doing fairly well in melee. They've pushed back my flank over here. The hexes that he's putting in on my men here are pretty effective, and it's really helping his Grave Guard fight well against what would otherwise be very good dwarf infantry. But you can see here I'm using my Runesmith, and I'm going to start buffing my guys back up with some of his runes. So there goes a damage resistance rune. And I'm just using everything I can here to buff my men up, and I'm chasing this White King, and I'm also looking for an opportunity to get Von Karstein. So right there I've used a direct damage spell on him, so I'm going to leech away some of his power, but he also regenerates power. So Von Karstein is kind of a nightmare, really. He's really good if used properly. Yeah, let's take a look at the fight up close, though. Again, over here, my guys are holding out again. These are Longbeards and Dwarf Warriors. And then up the center, I've got some more Dwarf Warriors with great weapons that came in as reinforcements. Here's Ungrim taking on the White King. And Ungrim ought to do pretty good versus the White King. In fact, he's definitely doing fine. And then Von Karstein is over here still too. Man, this guy looks sweet. The vampires are definitely a terrifying faction. Check out my Slayers. I think he fought to the death there. Look at Von Karstein coming on in over here. Yeah, a lot of my guys are in rough shape here, but some of the vampire units are starting to get a little weak, and if I can take out Von Karstein, I'll be able to tilt the battle completely in my favor. I think the White King is getting close to the end of his life, but there's more of these Grave Guard. I'm using my Runesmith again, just as best I can to keep buffing my men's stats. But I mean, as you can see, the vampires really are starting to push in on me. I'm bringing back troops that had routed. I'm going to bring them back into the battlefield. And I've got a desperate fight going on here with some of my last few men. But here comes Ungrim. He finally able to pin down Von Karstein. And Von Karstein, he is a melee expert, but he's not, you know, completely dedicated to melee. So when he fights Ungrim head-on like this, Ungrim's going to get the better of that. And indeed, you can see that he kills Von Karstein. And almost immediately, you're going to start to see disintegrating vampires. That definitely gives me the edge, and as we look, you can watch their army. All that little confetti and stuff coming up indicates that they're disintegrating. And that's basically their guys will just start falling apart. They've lost their leadership, and they're starting to lose decisively. So it was a very, very fun battle, and that Hex Wraith charge from the vampires was beautiful, really well done. And really, like I said, that was a fun one to take the dwarves against the vampires. Some factions I'm not a big fan of using the dwarves against, but vampires is kind of a fun matchup there in my mind. So you can see some of my infantry did pretty good here, the Dwarf Warriors. My Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, not so much, because a lot of them were facing some really vicious vampire infantry, and you can see the vampire infantry was doing quite well here. Even 60 kills out of a skeleton warrior is great. These Grave Guard with great weapons, they were inflicting some damage on me, that's for sure. The Hex Wraiths did not pay off, though. These guys were a very expensive investment, and they just could not get enough kills. The rear charge was really nice there, but it just wasn't enough to break my men. The dwarves do have pretty high leadership, and even though this unit causes terror, and you know, I think if I would have had maybe an Empire army or something, that may have done it. Anyway, it was interesting to see. Hope y'all enjoyed this one. HeirofCarthage signing out for now, and I'll be back soon with more Warhammer Online battles.